Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, today we are diving into a mystery that honestly sounds like it was pulled right out of a movie script. We're calling it the Little Singapore Mystery. So we're starting with a total anomaly. Why on earth does a quiet, rural farming village tucked away in South India hold the nickname Little Singapore? I mean, usually when we picture an agricultural village, we're thinking simple dwellings, quiet lives, right? But this specific place is famous for an almost unbelievable, disproportionate amount of international wealth. So, where did all this come from? Well, the visual proof of that wealth is just striking. You've got these massive, incredibly ornate palatial mansions, like the Ashra Palace and the Khan Sahib Mansion, just standing there as total architectural anomalies, right in the middle of rural India. Notice the intricate balconies, the grand pillars, those vibrant, deliberate color schemes. I mean, these aren't just big houses. They are literal statements of staggering wealth and worldly influence. Section 1. Ancient Roots. The 1212 Arrival. To actually solve this 20th century architectural mystery, we have to zoom all the way back to the 13th century. It's crazy, but our story begins not in India, but in Anatolia, with the Turkish Seljuk Sultanate of Rum. The historical sources tell us that back in the year 1212, King Kulotunga Chola III of the Chola Empire actually invited the Turkish Seljuk Sultan Izzeddin to establish relations. And because of that, the Sultan sent 3,000 elite troops, along with a Bedouin imam, straight into the Chola Empire. The king gifted them a village, which eventually became known as Koothanallur, and upon arriving, they immediately made their mark, building the region's first big mosque out of clay and sand that very same year. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is that this wasn't just some brief visit or a temporary military outpost. No, they planted incredibly deep roots. Since the original group was a mix of Turkish troops and Arab Bedouins, who were often referred to as Moors, their descendants carry really distinct traits, blending both fair and dark complexions. And get this, they left indisputable physical evidence. We're talking actual Turkish rock inscriptions found embedded right into the walls of the local mosques. It's amazing. It perfectly anchors this unbelievable history in reality. And over the centuries, that initial group of 3,000 expanded into a thriving population of over 30,000. Section 2. The Warrior Clan, the Routhers. So over the following centuries, this initial settlement built into a highly distinct cultural identity. And that brings us to the Routhers. As one of the earliest Muslim communities in India, they're a deeply native warrior clan population, living mostly in Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Interestingly enough, historical records show that even after their religious conversion to Islam, which happened under the influence of saints like Navar Shah, they fiercely retained their Ravatar caste name. Their whole identity was just inherently tied to their martial prowess. And this perfectly illustrates their immense value to the local rulers. They weren't just everyday settlers, they were literally renowned as the elite cavalrymen of the Chola and Pandya kingdoms. They were this traditional martial clan, deeply respected for their military skill. Actually, so much so that from the 16th to the 18th centuries, members of this community were found serving as powerful chieftains and zamadars. They were essentially the muscle and the strategic protectors of the interior of southern Tamaliko. Section 3. The Southeast Asian Branch. All right, so having established their martial dominance, the clan totally pivoted in the late 1800s. The world was changing, and so were the Routhers. In a massive, honestly surprising geographic leap, Khan Sahib J.M. Muhammad Ismail looked way beyond the borders of Tamil Nadu and expanded the family's influence all the way into Vietnam. He established a massive business presence in Hanoi and Saigon under the name J.M. Muhammad Ismail Frères. And we're not talking about a small export shop here. This was the beginning of an entirely new empire. The sheer scale of their operation was incredible. You had this extensive staff for their trading company, all elegantly dressed, representing a highly sophisticated multinational enterprise. But they didn't stop at building a commercial powerhouse. They actually became the administrative and spiritual pillars of their new community. Take the spectacular Saigon Central Mosque, for example. The records state this beautifully crafted mosque was actually built right during J.M. Muhammad Ismail's tenure as its administrator. Talk about leaving a legacy. Section 4. Power, Politics, and Nehru. Now, this brings us to a period where their business success directly intersected with high-stakes global politics. As the 20th century rolled on, the leadership torch passed to figures like J.M. Abdulaziz, and under his guidance, the family's influence went way beyond mere commerce. Aziz became a central political and social pillar for the entire Indian diaspora living in French Indochina. He wielded immense multinational power, eventually even serving as the president of the Central Indian Association. And we actually have an original artifact that absolutely validates this prestige. It's the official business card of J.M. Abdelaziz. You can see it physically stamps his authority in French, listing him not just as Directeur Général, but as the Chef de la Congrégation Musulmane, meaning chief of the Muslim congregation and the administrator of the mosque. I mean, this tiny piece of paper is just a fascinating window into the incredible diplomatic weight he carried in Saigon. And that elite status, it was formally recognized on the world stage. The family was actually awarded stunning Chevalier medals. These are really prestigious French orders of chivalry, given to them in recognition of their massive contributions and elevated social standing in French Indochina. Think about that for a second. From Turkish cavalrymen in the 13th century to decorated knights of commerce in the 20th century, it's an almost unbelievable trajectory. They were so influential, in fact, that they literally found themselves in the crosshairs of global conflicts. During World War II, around July 1940, the Japanese specifically pressured Aziz regarding Indian nationalist movements, urging his cooperation. And there's this remarkable historical photograph where we see Jam Aziz prominently hosting none other than Jawaharlal Nehru himself, right there in Saigon. It's an absolutely astonishing historical crossover. They were operating at the absolute highest levels of international diplomacy. Section 5. A global legacy brought home. Okay, so now we have to connect this vast, powerful, southeastern empire back to the very village where our explainer began. All that immense wealth, the diplomatic immunity, the worldly experience gathered on the bustling, cosmopolitan streets of Saigon, well, none of it stayed strictly in Vietnam. You can almost feel the authority of a man at the peak of international success striding through the city, but his heart and ultimately his capital remained deeply tied to Tamil Nadu. The fortunes they built overseas were funneled directly back home. You had the luxury and modernity of their life in Saigon, posing with imported classic cars, and that directly paid for the grand, totally anomalous architecture back in Koothanallur. Those massive palaces and mansions we saw at the very beginning, yeah, they weren't built on local farming money. They were built on international trade, wartime diplomacy, and a legacy that literally spans oceans. And this direct pipeline of wealth is exactly what originally earned Koothanallur its title as Little Singapore. It truly makes you stop and think. If one small, unassuming village in Tamil Nadu can be the nexus point connecting 13th century ancient Turkish cavalry, 19th century trade empires, and 20th century Vietnamese wartime politics, what other incredible, interconnected global micro-histories are just waiting to be uncovered right where we stand? Look closely at the old buildings in your own town. You never know what ancient empire might have helped build them.